Hey everyone, welcome to the Petrolholics Podcast. I'm Tom.
And I'm Carmen.
Got another amazing podcast for you today.
We're going to start off talking about the New York Auto Show this year. Specifically, we're going to talk about the McLaren Sports Series, specifically the 570S. We're going to talk about Cadillac and their CT6. We'll also talk about the new Lincoln Continental.
Subaru released a BRZ STI concept. Then we're also going to be talking about Mercedes Sprinter van AMG and the end of Top Gear, or as we knew it.
And then finally, we'll be talking about Robert De Niro's role in an upcoming movie playing Enzo Ferrari. And finally, we'll be recapping the Formula One Chinese Grand Prix.
Make sure to check us out at Petrolholics.com, and we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Petrolholics. Okay, so I want to talk about the McLaren 570S. So I know, Carmen, we've both been anticipating the first sports series model for some time.
Yeah, especially with all the hype that they've been building up. I've been really excited for it.
All those stupid Black Swan moment teasers, and we're disappointed.
Leading us on for months.
Well, first off, the design, it just doesn't look right to me. It just looks off. It looks pretty futuristic, but to say the least.
You've seen that with the rear end. It has a very futuristic look, almost like the new Koenigsegg Regera, which we talked about in our second podcast.
And the front end it looks like a smashed, like a 650S, kind of similar to the Huracan, having like a smashed front end that looks like a Gallardo. So I don't know if that's the latest trend.
Yeah, it seems like it.
But it just definitely wasn't what we were expecting. The performance and just the price are very similar to 12C. I know McLaren officially announced that it's gonna start at $184,000, which isn't that big of a difference going to a 650S, or even picking up a used 12C. If you're going to spend, it's not going to be $184,000 out the door. You still have to think about, taxes and destination fees. You're almost better off, spending a little bit more money, or even picking up a used 12C, at least in my mind. But then again, you won't get a warranty if you buy a used 12C.
Yeah, I know you were saying earlier too, like with the performance being so similar to the old 12C, which isn't really even that old. It's almost upsetting, they've been planning this sports series for a while, and then next thing you know, they come out with this car, which is basically just a 12C that I don't think looks as pretty. And it costs less, but the 12C's depreciated more than to a lower value than this car, and like you said, you can pick up a used one either for the same price or for $20,000-$30,000 cheaper, for the same performance and for what I believe is a prettier car.
And I was expecting it to kind of be priced maybe or in the same range as the AMG GT, or even just kind of like a base 911. But I think a Turbo S is about $2,000 less. So, just, again, we're disappointed.
Yeah, it's to make the distinction again that it's a sports series, and to say that this is a different, a whole different level when compared to the 650S, it just doesn't seem right. I don't know, they hyped it up too much that it was going to be an affordable car when it still is. It's significantly cheaper than the 650S, but it really is just a 12C that, I don't know, same performance.
An ugly 12C.
Yeah, exactly.
But the interior is also disappointing. I get that they're going for the futuristic thing, but it just doesn't really tie in together. It just looks off again.
You're a big fan of the 12C interior, too.
Yeah, I am.
It's a very comfortable car.
For the 5 minutes I've sat in one. It is pretty comfortable, but
yeah. But there's been news that McLaren will also release a cheaper version of the 570S in China.
Kind of like what they did with the 650. I think the name for the Asian market, 570 is a 540C.
Okay.
But we don't know if it's going to make it stateside or not.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, the 650S version also didn't, or that's not here. So.
Oh, I also want to say that I've heard that it looks a ton better in person. So we've only seen pictures, so maybe it's got more sex appeal in person. So then another big release from the New York Auto Show was the Cadillac CT6. So now there's some teasers that have been floating around, and we finally saw the rear end.
Yeah. I don't know, I think it does look pretty nice from the front and from the side. I don't really like the front grille. Kind of seems like it reminds me of a generic like GM grille. I'm not really sure, but the headlights I think look really nice. I know
you would think for their flagship car they would have maybe a different grille, but that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean they're changing it up from like the ATS-V, but personally I think the ATS-V grille looks nicer. But I understand where they're getting this from, and I guess it makes sense. It looks okay on the car, I guess, but you just have to get used to it.
But maybe that's the reason why they didn't show the back in the teaser, is because it's so awful looking.
Yeah, for some reason it looks like they just spent the money on the front and the design of the front half, and they kind of forgot about the back half. I know we were talking, it's kind of, this happens more often than you think, like with the Alfa Romeo 4C with the headlights. They ran out of research money to develop a headlight, so they came up with the very strange headlight that they originally had on the car. But it kind of seems like they did this too with the rear end of the CT6. It just kind of looks cheap on a car that in general looks a lot nicer everywhere else. I know you were saying it reminded you of something else too.
Yeah, the trunk, just the shape of the trunk reminds me of just like a Mercedes S-Class. I know American designers haven't been very creative lately. Like, for example, the Lincoln Continental, the refresh got unveiled also at the New York Auto Show, and Luke Donkerwalk, the designer of the Bentley Continental and also numerous Lamborghinis, he personally called out the Lincoln Continental designer and said that it looked like a flying spur concept without the round lights, which I think, in fact, it does.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's almost the same level as like the Chrysler 300 kind of knockoff in the old Hyundai, almost just like a cheap Chinese knockoff of a car. But I know he even said that.
Yeah, I
too.
think Luke Donkerwalk said he expected it from China, but not from Lincoln.
Yeah, pretty sassy remark, but I don't blame him. I mean, when you're designing these cars, you don't want other people to steal your ideas, and then on it'll be associated with Lincolns and things like that. When you see a Bentley, obviously not to the full extent, but you might at first think, hey, it has the same shape as a Lincoln, and think, I don't know, like the Bentley's not worth the price because you can buy a similar looking car that has a Lincoln badge on it. I don't know. It kind of muddies up these people's designs.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the town car has such a rich history. Like, even today, it's shown as it's like an executive car, and for them just to basically, like, even the side vent is exactly the same on a flying spur concept. All they really did was kind of stretch out the grille and change the headlights and place a massive Lincoln badge in the center. Disappointing, to say in the least.
Yeah, it is. Like, it is a big change, and had the Bentley not existed before, we'd be talking about how amazing of a refresh it is for the Lincoln brand, but really it is just a copy of Luke Donkerwolf's design. So it is a little upsetting, like you said, to say the least.
And more disappointing news from New York. Subaru brought a BRZ STI concept, but they said they have no plans on actually producing it. Which they're teasing consumers, or just, STI enthusiasts, because it's well known that everyone wants a BRZ STI variant, and Subaru's response was, well, if you want an STI variant, buy the normal BRZ.
I don't know, it just seems weird. You think that they would have come out with that already, not even just the concept, but the car itself, almost right from the beginning, because it seems like, this is their version of like that type of sports car, and then they're not even offering an STI version of that, but they have STI version. I don't know.
It's almost like Mercedes saying, well, if you want, an AMG variant, buy the normal C-Class if you want a C63 AMG. It's not right. But I guess I can kind of understand where they're coming from, because it's mainly for performance enthusiasts. And, not the regular average car buyer is going to be like, oh, I have a family, I'm going to go buy a BRZ.
Yeah, that's the thing. Their demographic is mostly going to be younger males, I think. And younger females, too.
Mm-hmm.
But, like you said, people without families, and people who buy that car, yeah, maybe some of them will only care about the way it looks, but you're going to have a decent fraction of the population that is willing to spend a little more to get, better performance out of it, and a more aggressive styling. I don't know, it just seems just obvious that, unless maybe it was part of the original deal between the companies, that they didn't produce a version that was more powerful or anything, because that might take sales away from the other companies.
And Subaru has strongly stated that there's not going to be an STI variant for the past couple of years. I know there's been so many rumors, but I know sales for the BRZ and the FRS have been disappointing lately. They're not on target.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Maybe it is like the FRS and the BRZ. Those are the only models that kind of were allowed in their contract for this collaboration. Because I think they would be able to improve sales if they produced an STI version. Like, logically, I can't think of a reason why they wouldn't even have that as an option.
They should just take the old BRZs and replace them with STI parts. If they're all just sitting in the back of a dealership.
Yeah. Has anybody customized a BRZ and like made their own makeshift STI version? I wonder if that's...
I think I know it's SEMA last year was just filled of like supercharged FRSs or BRZs, and with massive rear wings. So I think you can create your own.
Yeah.
But people like that STI badge.
Yeah, it shouldn't have to be that you do that where you
with a warranty would be nice. Yeah. So let's hope Subaru does make a BRZ STI. I'm sure they will.
I hope they do. It deserves it. Honestly, the BRZ deserves an STI.
No, it certainly does. But this could just be like a test to gauge interest in the STI variant, just to kind of track, if how many people are interested in possibly buying it.
Yeah, you'd think that they would have done that near the beginning, though. I mean, it seems like you said, it's already at a point where the sales are declining a little bit, and not like they were ever really impressive to begin with.
But they could also be not wanting to ruin the BRZ's balance, because it's kind of like a Miata. If you add too much power, it kind of just defeats the purpose of the car. But I don't think Subaru would be worried about that. They'd be worried about making the most money possible. Yeah, probably.
I don't know if Jalopnik users would agree that you're saying a overpowered Miata is a bad thing. You might get some hate mail. Speaking of overpowered cars, the Mercedes Sprinter van AMG. How about that thing?
I feel foolish that I kind of fell for it. Mercedes, they released or I think it was like a press release the day before April Fool's Day about an AMG Sprinter van, and I totally fell for it, but it's not going to happen, and it probably never will. But wasn't there's the Top Gear when they took the Ford Transit van, and it had the massive, it was a race spec Transit van, so it's like, oh, okay, it makes sense. But speaking of Top Gear,
that's so sad to hear.
About the Sprinter van or
Top
about?
Gear. All right, we can talk about Top Gear.
It's been a sad couple of weeks, ever since that first week of March, with Jeremy Clarkson getting in the altercation with the producer, and it happened. Jeremy Clarkson is no longer. It hurts me to say this, but Jeremy Clarkson is no longer affiliated with Top Gear.
The presenters all declined to renew their contract for the future with BBC. So it's a very upsetting time, and we should
Can we just take a moment for silence?
I was about to say that, we should take a moment of silence. But yeah, we should play Taps, and then we can call it Taps Gear, because it's dead. Do you think they're going to keep Top Gear alive, though, the TV show?
I think they are, because I noticed on TopGear.com they changed the header photo. Before it was Richard, Jeremy, and James with the Stig, and now it's just the Stig.
It's pretty depressing. It's all open and like just an open picture, and then just the Stig.
But in the Stig's visor, there's you can see a 918 LaFerrari and a P1.
I think they're just rubbing it in that that we haven't been able to see.
It wouldn't be the
yet.
same, I want Jeremy and Richard and James to, be part of it.
You know what they should do is they should have they should go on James May's unemployed
his YouTube
channel and then just have
do it on there.
Responses to all the new Top Gear episodes. Be like, this is what we would have said.
But I don't think there's even been anyone confirmed for... The thing I'm kind of wondering about is what are they going to do with those episodes that they've shot that haven't been released? I hope we do get to see them.
They'll probably auction them off. Make some extra money. They might do special episodes, not really air them as the season, but either maybe just sell them as part of the season, like a DVD of the season, which would be kind of a ridiculous season pack. You'd have a few episodes, and then it just kind of ends in the middle. So I don't know if they'll make that. But they might do.
But I almost subscribe to Top Gear magazine, and it's pretty expensive if you live in the U.S. It's about over $100. So I'm kind of glad I didn't.
Yeah.
It was like a week before the altercation with Clarkson, so.
Yeah, it was good timing.
But it kind of sucks because with the Top Gear, Jeremy and the other two, they were responsible for getting Ferrari and McLaren to agree to the hypercar, or the trio of hypercars to be compared to against each other. And now that they're gone, I bet you Top Gear will still do the test, but just without the three.
Yeah, they'll get the credit for it. Nobody else was able to get this thing to happen, and now the BBC. I mean, to be fair, I guess the BBC was funding the show for so long, and it did contribute to the popularity. But really, I think the BBC was constantly holding Top Gear back. Clarkson and the other two were always pushing it forward and being controversial, which increased the viewer base, and then BBC was always tightening the leash and not letting them go to 7-Eleven.
But I think the reason why the leash was so tight for Top Gear was because BBC is funded by the government. So
yeah, I mean,
I think if it was maybe funded by Sky or something,
yeah,
it would have been a different situation.
Indirectly representing their entire country. I mean, and that goes along with kind of what I want to say next. It's hard to say that Clarkson was in the right. I don't think I can, say that he was in the right for what happened.
No, I can't either. I certainly can't either.
It's just unfortunate because we want to side with Jeremy, but we can't on this. It's just too bad that it also had to mean the end of, the current era.
I think if it wasn't violent, if it was just maybe he offended a certain demographic, that would be different. But since he punched a producer,
those controversies always ended up disappearing.
But if you think about it, like a CEO at a Fortune 500 company, if he punches a secretary or any employee, he's gonna get fired. You can't punch anybody, even though it's Jeremy Clarkson. We know he's an ape. You can't do it.
Yeah. But I'm sure all three of them, together or separately, will find successful jobs and they'll be entertaining for a while.
I know James May's Twitter has been pretty entertaining, and his YouTube channel about his unemployment life. I know he made a 20-minute video about how to make a shepherd's pie.
Yeah, then he kept tweeting extra details about it. He's like, if anybody actually wants to make the pie, make sure you use this ingredient instead. Pretty serious about a shepherd's pie.
And also Richard Hammond kind of went off the rails because he shot his neighbor's cock. Peacock, that is.
Yeah.
But that last month, or March, it sounded kind of like an intro to a Top Gear episode. James May yells at a printer, and then Richard shoots his neighbor's cock, and then Jeremy punches a producer.
Yeah, I'm sure they probably already used that in one of their episodes.
But I know Jeremy Clarkson was going through a lot with the past couple of years. I know he went through a messy divorce. He lost his mother, and being such an influential person in the entertainment industry can be pretty pressuring. So I know that's no excuse for his actions. But Carmen, I know that we were both talking about how we felt like we matured as enthusiasts watching Top Gear. We have this sudden appreciation for hatchbacks that we didn't understand at first. We love Alfa Romeos now. And we hate Benny buses.
Yeah, I really do despise those buses. And it wouldn't have happened without Top Gear. I guess we'd just like to say that we're not alone when we say that Top Gear was one of our favorite shows on television. That's why it was one of the most widely watched shows in the world, and it's unfortunate that it happened, but we understand why, and I don't know, we're looking forward to see what the three can produce outside of Top Gear, but I'm sure we'll be watching a lot of the old episodes, watching reruns over and over. Just kind of stinks that it happened right after Netflix took down all the old seasons,
and right after Ferrari agreed.
Yeah, it's just bad timing for everything.
That still gets to me.
It's the worst part.
But my Sunday nights have been rather depressing without Top Gear. Nothing to look forward to.
Yeah, I'll have to dedicate that to watching James May's Shepherd Pie videos and maybe even his Man Lab shows and such. And some Clarkson documentaries, and still get some substance, I guess, but it just won't be in the form of Top Gear.
What's going to happen to the Stig?
I don't know, maybe they'll kill him off again.
Well, he was raised by wolves, so maybe he's got something
lined up. Let him back out in the wild.
But I think his legs are hydraulic, so they really can't be maintained in the wilderness.
Yeah, he's been domesticated a little bit. And they say it's not safe to re-release those into the wild.
Yeah, but he did think Star Wars was a documentary, so maybe it's best that he isn't let out into the wild. But apparently, if the Stig were to catch fire, he would burn for 1,000 days, much like a Ferrari 458.
That was just mean. It wasn't really a move a good fellow would make, Tom.
But speaking of Robert De Niro...
Yeah, he is going to be playing Enzo Ferrari in an upcoming movie. Which pretty excited to see.
That's awesome. I don't think I've been this excited to see a movie since Rush.
Yeah, and Rush was an awesome movie. I was just talking to my girlfriend about that, how, even if you're not a Formula One fan, it really is just a really nice movie. Or, not nice, but a really great movie.
Entertaining.
Yeah.
But I think Clint Eastwood might produce it, so it should be...
what an amazing mashup between the two old guys, Robert De Niro and Clint Eastwood.
But it's just going to be difficult to wait for that movie to come out.
I don't know, he doesn't really do anything like that, though.
About Ferraris?
Yeah, Clint Eastwood's not like the...
Gran Torino.
I don't know, it just doesn't seem like that's something that would be
He
like
would
a normal
do.
movie that he would produce. I mean, he's made...
Where's Ron
some pretty
Howard?
good movies, though. But Ron Howard really didn't do anything like that before Rush, so that's a good point, too,
But do you remember the famous quote from Enzo? Aerodynamics are for people that can't build engines. I wonder if they're going to put that line in the movie.
Probably.
But speaking of Formula One and Ferrari...
Oh, nice segue.
Ferrari won.
Yes, finally.
The Malaysian Grand Prix, if you haven't heard.
Finally.
So no, we haven't done a podcast in a while, so we weren't able to do a recap of the Malaysian Grand Prix. We apologize for that. We've just been really busy.
Which is unfortunate, because that was my favorite
race
Grand
ever
Prix in a long time. Yeah. That was the first Ferrari win since what? The
Spain
Spanish Grand Prix
2013?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's quite some time.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But it was a shock. Like, I knew Ferrari had the pace, but I didn't know they had that much pace.
Yeah. I mean, I know people were talking about how they would be able to handle doing one less stop than Mercedes, which obviously, gives them a 20-something second advantage. But I honestly didn't think that would translate into a race win. And I know people are conspiracy theorizing that Mercedes is sandbagging, and they kind of have slowed it down a little bit because now nobody's talking about evening the field now with rules and stuff. But it doesn't seem like that's really the case because, we'll talk about the Chinese Grand Prix soon, but specifically with the Malaysian Grand Prix, none of the other teams were able to catch up either. It was just kind of Ferrari out in front, and then Mercedes was still pretty strong behind them. So, I don't know. I don't think it was set up by Mercedes, as some people claim. I think Ferrari really did have the pace, and they were given the opportunity because of the tire management. Then they took it, and with the good pace, ended up with a race win. So, I don't think it could have ended better for them.
If you recall from the Australia press conference after the race, Nico Rosberg invited Sebastian Vettel into the Mercedes garage on Friday for that was then the upcoming Malaysian Grand Prix, and it didn't end up happening. So I'm kind of glad it didn't, because everyone would be like, "Oh, Ferrari won because Sebastian spied on Mercedes and he was able to."
Yeah, can you imagine? They think he looked through some strategy book or stole some.
Do you remember the camera glasses he had in that
Mercedes?
one advertisement for Infinity?
Yeah, maybe even people could also think that he was using some of the other sponsors of Ferrari, like Kaspersky and stuff, to sabotage the Mercedes cars too and give them an advantage. Who knows? But speaking of Ferrari sponsors,
so I don't know how to quite explain this, but
Dick Butt. We apologize for the profanity.
Can't we say gentleman sausage?
But we really couldn't get the point across any other way. Yeah, you said the name. What was it? Richard Hiney. It really wouldn't have worked the same. It doesn't have the same effect. So what it is this, profane image of inappropriate. It's like a childish drawing of inappropriate body parts.
Of two inappropriate body parts morphed together.
Yeah. And it ended up on the Ferrari car during the first practice.
So what happened was, I guess what UPS did was they took a bunch of Facebook profile pictures of their fans, and they used their fans' pictures to recreate like a UPS logo. And so this
phallic
offensive
character.
image, which could be described as a morph of body parts.
Yeah, to say the least.
Made it onto Sebastian Vettel's and Kimi Räikkönen's Formula One car. And they even have they have pictures, they have a video of them applying the image with a smile with like a heat gun, and it was like a massive media event. Just to think.
I wonder if they knew.
That's why Sebastian was smiling.
Yeah, that's why their smiles were so big.
But eventually, I think it got sharpied out during.
Yeah, good old fashioned marker. That'll fix the problem.
But it was on the car for, I think, the first 2 practices.
Yeah, it's amazing. And if it was planned by UPS as an advertisement move, good on them that it worked. But I don't think so. It doesn't seem like it. Because I don't think you want to be sneaking things onto a Ferrari car when they're, just stepped down from the title of most powerful company in the world. You don't really want to be sneaking things past them.
Logo on the car.
We should have. We should have just.
Yeah, we should have thought about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this was funnier, probably.
Yeah, people would have recognized it.
Yeah,
it's so small, but I think if you're familiar with imagery, you would have definitely been able to cite it. But speaking of phallic body parts, Nico Rosberg.
He's been complaining again.
Yeah, he was definitely acting like his nickname, Britney Spears, during that entire weekend.
Yeah. He did it again.
But I think in qualifying, after Lewis got pole, he was P2, he went on the radio and said, he said to his engineers, "Come on, guys! It's their fault that he didn't drive fast enough."
Yeah, it's the same car. What? Come on.
He relied so heavily on his engineers just to coach him through the race.
Yeah, I know he's been struggling now.
Ever since the radio message ban, Nico Rosberg has not been doing so great. So I think he definitely does he relied heavily on his engineer to help him win the race.
Yeah, he definitely seems to be having a hard time dealing with problems on his own, which people are arguing it's a key skill to have as a Formula One driver, and he seems to lack that. But I mean, it's arguable because in the modern day of Formula One does include getting help from your engineers and things like that. So I don't know if it's safe to say that it's a key part of Formula One to be able to handle problems on your own, but I really think it is, and it's a bad sign for Nico because I think Lewis had the advantage all along, last season and this season so far, and now he also lost the advantage, or not even advantage, but he's losing even more than Lewis when it comes to getting help from the engineers. I feel like Lewis can handle problems on his own a little bit better.
He just really isn't like a
likable. He almost
likable.
complains just as much, but
he kind of took Sebastian Vettel's spot as the most hated F1 driver. Now everyone really shows a lot of disdain.
Yeah, everybody loves
him.
Sebastian now because he's on Ferrari.
But Rosberg will try to make a joke or two during a press conference, and it would just make him seem like such a big asshole. It happens again and again.
It's always a flop of a joke. Either he fails on the delivery, or he's just it just never ends.
Maybe it's just kind of how his dad was a Formula One driver, and it almost seems like everything was given to him. He hasn't really worked or earned anything for himself. So maybe that's also the reason why people aren't the biggest fan. But just the way he acts in general.
Yeah, it could also explain why he's dependent on his engineers too.
It's very true. But I think ever since Monaco, 2014, I became a Lewis fan because I was kind of undecided. I was like, yeah, I mean, they both are in the the silver arrows, and it was kind of interesting. I believe it was an FP2. Someone actually made it onto the track. It was basically ran right in front of Hulkenberg's car, made it into the pit lane, and then they went into the Ferrari garage and asked for a drive in the car.
Yeah, he said he wanted to drive a Ferrari.
Which is understandable.
I know people are crazy, but that just seems like the most sane thing to say after just running across the track,
Especially with the amount of, or just the massive emphasis on safety the last few years, and how, a lot of marshals have lost their lives from trying to retrieve a car or...
Well, yeah, I mean, even if there were people going after him, trying to stop him, he could have caused harm to himself or others or drivers. It's a pretty serious thing. Formula 1's already dangerous enough as it is. You don't need to be making it more dangerous by throwing yourself onto the track. Yeah,
because imagine if Hulkenberg had hit the crazy guy running on track. He would have also been pretty injured, or could have been seriously injured as well.
Yeah, or at least psychologically damaged. I mean, that's a pretty serious thing. Because that was by a pretty long straight, right? Or is that...
Yes. But I remember a few years back, I think Bruno Senna, I think he almost hit a dog. I think he did hit a dog.
I can't imagine with the person, yeah.
But qualifying, Kimi Räikkönen, he was pretty strong in the first couple of practices. And then when the third session of qualifying started, I don't know if he was having trouble with his car or just the balance, but didn't do very good. But moving on to race day of the Chinese Grand Prix, right before the race, I know there was a little bit of an issue with Vettel and Hamilton. I think Vettel kind of cut in front of Hamilton in the pit lane, and Hamilton went on the radio and complained to his engineers, saying that he almost crashed into him, and it was just kind of a big issue that Lewis...
Yeah, he thought he was purposely messing with their strategy before the race.
But marshals didn't think it was unsafe, so Vettel didn't get penalized. It just seems like the Mercedes drivers are kind of babies.
Yeah, it does seem like it.
But I'm a little biased because I am a Ferrari fan.
No, it's just easy to see. I don't know. It just seems a little overdone on the complaining.
They're very dramatic.
Like I said earlier, I mean, they're in the best car on the grid. Why... I don't know, it just doesn't seem like they're the ones that should be complaining.
But the race itself was a little bit on the boring side. There wasn't a ton of action. It's hard to transition from Malaysia when it was just jam-packed with, intense battles and
all over the place.
Someone that's not Mercedes winning, to basically the first 6 positions that did not change too much.
Yeah, except at the very beginning, with Kimi jumping the 2 Williams. He was behind them because of his relatively poor performance in qualifying, but, he made that up. But besides that, like you said, really no movement from the front of the pack, and then the back of the pack there was some action, but not as much as you hope for. It's kind of the same old story with that.
Yeah, it seems like Kimi really shines during the race. Qualifying's never really his strong point.
Yeah, and it puts him in a bad position, but it makes you wonder if he was able to get a good time in Q3, if he would have been able to jump ahead of Vettel in the beginning. That would have caused some more interesting race dynamics, I think, too. But he was kind of put in a bad position being behind the Williams from the start.
Yeah, but Ricciardo had a pretty rough start. I don't know what happened. I think he it seems like he always has a lot of trouble with race starts. And then he had more trouble with his teammate interfering with his strategy, because Daniel Ricciardo was on the soft compound, and Daniel Kvyat was on the medium compound. And Kvyat was in front of Ricciardo and just would not let him by, even though through constant radio messages from Red Bull saying, let Ricciardo pass. You guys are on different strategies. Took Ricciardo some time to get by him.
I understand, defying team orders. You hear that all the time, and people say, yeah, it's good for them for defying team orders. But the way that Kvyat was doing it just seemed like immature and very dangerous and stupid in a sense, because
especially protecting the team's best interests.
Yeah, I can understand if you're fighting him to the point where you don't let him pass, but there were some instances where it looked like he was going to purposely turn in and crash with Daniel Ricciardo, which, I mean, maybe he was just trying to scare Red Bull, being like, this is what I could do. If you tell me what to do again, I could crash into him and we'll both be out. I don't think that's what it was, so I think he was just
being a prick.
Not mature enough to handle the situation.
Yeah, I agree with you. There were certain moments where it seems like he was going to let Ricciardo. He opened the door for Ricciardo to pass, and then at the last second, he'd almost kind of turn in on him.
Yeah, cut in front of him. That's what made me think that it was a very immature and dangerous move. You just kind of see him pop back into Ricciardo's field of view after letting him through. So it was kind of weird to see. Ricciardo eventually made it through, but still slowed him down.
And they were in the same car. The only difference between them is just the tires. It's going to happen at it. Eventually, especially since Ricciardo's more of an experienced driver.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm sure we'll probably see something similar again later in the season. We'll see how Kvyat handles it, too. I don't know if he'll handle it the same way or if Red Bull will try again to tell him what to do over the radio.
But Carmen kind of got to him because he wasn't able to finish the race. He had an engine failure.
Yeah. I don't know if that's his fault or if that's just...
It's probably Renault. I'm going to go with Renault.
Karma or Renault? Who knows?
But Nico Hülkenberg also had to retire. He lost his gearbox. It's been a pretty disappointing year for him. I think he's got a ton of potential, but really hasn't been able to shine in the Force India.
Yeah, no, he hasn't been able to show the world what he has when it comes to talent. Sitting behind them with VJ-M08.
VJ?
Is that not what it's called?
No, I think it is. I'm thinking of the team principal,
the VJ
guy with sunglasses.
That's why he named it that.
With 2 pieces of hair.
He named it after himself.
What a dick. But Maldonado actually had a pretty decent race. He had some pretty good overtakes on the Saubers, and I think also a few Toro Rossos.
Even Martin Brundle was conceding that Pastor Maldonado was having a good race. Clever racecraft, very precise movements, and very smart overtakes and things. So it was impressive to see. Kind of reminded us of his really incredible performance a few years ago. I know he has his moments quite often where he crashes and things, but sometimes it shines through his skill. So I think it was nice to see, kind of a refresher.
But you probably can predict how his race ended. It wasn't his fault, though.
Surprisingly, it seems to be the...
Well, no, he did, in fact, finish the race.
Year is that he's not at fault, but he's still crashing out of races.
But another driver that really shined in China was Max Verstappen. He had also a bunch of incredible overtakes, I think, on Marcus Ericsson and Felipe Nasr. And I think Martin Brundle commented that he's a megastar in the making, which is... It's strange to hear, because a few months ago everyone was doubting him, saying, he's too young, he's 17 years old, he should not be in an F1 car. But he's really proving himself this year.
Yeah, especially when you compare him to some of the other drivers on the grid. He seems to have more control than some of the people that have been in Formula 1 for years now. And he seems to be already, at this age that really, really young. He seems like he has a lot more potential than a lot of the people on the grid, which it's a pretty impressive thing.
But unfortunately, his race was also spoiled by the Renault power unit. His engine failed towards the end of the race, which resulted the race finishing behind a safety car. So it was a bit anticlimactic because Kimi was getting closer and closer to Vettel, and he was on fresher tires. And I was just thinking to myself, Kimi can actually get on the podium.
Yeah, at least an interesting battle too.
And then, as soon as you know it, as much as I love the new safety car this year, the AMG GT, I didn't want to see it.
Yeah, we'll see it other times. Maybe on its own.
Probably in Bahrain.
Or in the rain sometime. And then for the final results, Jenson Button was penalized 5 seconds for his contact with Pastor Maldonado, I believe, and he ended up actually getting dropped down from P13 to P14 because of his penalty. So kind of unfortunate, but it's really not that unfortunate because they weren't in point scoring range anyway, so it's not like he lost points due to the penalty. It's just like a...
It's strange to hear that a McLaren is, all the way at the back of the grid, and they're celebrating finishing, or both cars finishing a race.
Yeah, the thing is, he was P13, which is the name of their sports series. Is that a coincidence, or are they just like advertising for their new model?
I don't know. But I felt like the entire race was just Nico Rosberg yelling at his engineer. And at first, he told his engineer to stop. He said less communication, like, you just stop talking to me, you're distracting me. And then he was complaining about Lewis Hamilton holding him up, because there was a point in the race where Hamilton was on the soft compound, and then Rosberg was on the medium compound. And I guess Hamilton was going pretty slow, and then Vettel was catching up to Rosberg, and he was also on the soft compound. So Rosberg was having to destroy his tires to, get closer to Lewis, or just to defend Vettel. So he kept complaining, "Oh, Lewis is ruining my race."
Yeah, he was saying that Lewis was doing it on purpose, holding him back, maybe to kind of either get him behind a Ferrari or to maybe even like incite contact between the two. Like he was complaining over the radio that Lewis was doing it on purpose, and I think the Mercedes engineers weren't sure if he was doing it on purpose or not, and they told him over the radio if he doesn't speed up, or if he is doing it on purpose, then they're going to give Nico the preferential strategy and let him go through and win the race. So it's a very bold move.
But the fact that Nico said that Lewis ruined my race, like, he did not ruin your race. If you want to win a race, you need to do better in qualifying. Like, you guys have the most power, the best cars on the grid. Like, come on.
To say that he ruined,
like, why don't you just pass him?
Exactly.
Then?
He could have. Yeah, if Lewis was holding him up, he should have caught up to him and passed him, not hovered behind him and, I don't know, complained that he was ruining his race.
And when you're in first, you can go as fast or slow or fast as you want. You have the control. If Rosberg wants to be in that position, then he needs to be faster. He needs to not choke in qualifying.
Yeah.
But I know the entire the press conference was just. It was just
very tense.
Rosberg complaining, "Oh, yeah, it was Hamilton ruined my race," which that's bullshit. Like, you ruined your own race.
He still came in second.
You still got second. You can't complain.
He wasn't in any different position than he would have been otherwise. So
he's just a big baby, and he even left his trophy on the podium.
Was that a gesture, like of disappointment, or was it that he forgot it in his anger? Who knows?
But the race ended with Hamilton in front, Nico Rosberg in second, followed by Vettel, Raikkonen. Massa was in fifth, Bottas was in sixth, and I'm sure if you're more interested in the rest of the results, you can look them up yourself. I'm just looking forward to Bahrain. It's awesome that, I don't have to wait a couple weeks or a week. It's next weekend, so I'm excited for Bahrain. Last year, it was filled with action between Lewis and Nico, and also that was when Pastor flipped. Was it Adrian Seudel or was it Esteban? I think it was Esteban Gutierrez. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the Ferraris will be thrown in the mix too, though, with all the battles up in front.
And
if so, then it'll be an
Pastor will be
race.
flipped.
The best thing too is that it's a relatively normal time this round because it's a night race. So over here, Central Standard Time in the U.S., it's a nice early morning race, so don't have to get up at 3:00 to watch the some practice.
But I think I'd rather stay up to 3:00 because my sleep schedule is already pretty screwed up. than having to wake up early.
Yeah. So overall, we both found the Chinese Grand Prix to be a little boring. But with Ferrari's results, it did show that their pace in Malaysia was true pace, at least partially. So that's a great sign, and we're happy to see that Ferrari does have a true pace. Maybe not this year, but soon they'll be able to fully compete with Mercedes for the title, which is incredible. Honestly, I'll admit that I personally never would have imagined it to be this soon.
They've really come
to
so
be able to
far,
say that.
Since Abu Dhabi, and then over the winter, they really transformed.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're still half a second behind at times on certain tracks, like specifically China, but that's a lot better than 2 seconds that they were last year. So it's a huge improvement, I think.
And like you were saying, like a lot of people were doubting Ferrari after Malaysia. People were saying, "Oh, it's because of the extreme heat," but they showed that they still have the pace in relatively normal conditions.
Yeah, it's a great sign.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening, and make sure to check us out at Petrolholics.com and on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Petrolholics.